Priestess with Pamela Eakins. Chapter 10. Bitten-by-the-Wolf. The Dark Ages. Friesland, 735. Day 6. I light the candle. The days stretch out like eons. Each day a piece of the world is open. Day 1, mystery awakens. Day 2, initiation deepens. Day 3, love begets life. Day 4, life contains death. Day 5, there are killers in the road. The candle flickers. The day is dark, misty. Low fog rolls over the bluff tops, lodging in droplets on Annis and Yarrow. The ocean lolls and crashes, a heavy gray metallic mass rolling at the bottom of the cliffs. I can see no seal or dolphin. A raven croaks from a high wire, calling me to pay attention. The wind is still, but there is a curious movement in the air. I whisper silently, "Riavek, are you there?" For a moment, I do not know if I want to go on. I do not know if I can go on, or if I should. How deep will this journey take me? Must I open the channel? What price will I pay for knowing? What price will you pay for remaining ignorant? Riavek addresses me softly, but directly. Riavek! We will not go much longer, he says. We are skipping. But there is so much more, so much in between. It is like you're writing. A few black scratchings on a white page. You choose a few thoughts to record, but most of the page lays empty, fallow. The emptiness is the space between the births, the deaths, the resurrections of eternal cycling, seeds dormant in the winter field. An eternity passes between day 1 and day 2, between day 2 and day 3. The black scratchings illuminate fragments of creation. But you will soon understand, if you do not already, that the Creator is larger than her art. The soul is far vaster than a few selected recollections. It is day 6. Day 6 is the day of repose. Not because we are finished, not because you have seen everything you need to see, but because 6 is regeneration and 7 is fraught with difficulty. Rest a while on this day and experience the wisdom and gratitude that is in you. 3 scenes flash quickly before my mind. I am 20-something, walking, limping down a narrow walking path lined with plantain, and I see in a rut a mummified cat head. It is shocking. But that seems way ahead of the story. Then I see Mar Emma, much younger than when she died, walking the same path with a hand cart on the way to Coldwater. Then I see Mar Emma in the cottage. Mar Emma is a strong Frisian woman, tall, lean, keen, a clear light in the forest. She has a mind of her own. You can see it shining out of her deep-set midnight blue eyes. The sisters of the tribe call her to the village to help them and to cure them, but they seem to be afraid of her at the same time. They do not befriend her. She was the one who could not be tamed. She is not like them. At the same time, Mar Emma is the one the spirits picked to understand the ways of life and death. She has the power of wart cunning. She knows all there is to know about the 9 sacred herbs, and this she has taught to me, just as the forester's grandmother taught her. I see Mar Emma in the cottage, and I am there with her, and she is telling me a story. This is how it begins. It was a long, long time ago. The forester was still alive then. He was a much younger man and still had the fire of the forest in him. He was a wild one, he was. He had fire in his eyes, and this is exactly what drew me. He and I, dear Wolfia, were birds of a feather, we were. I was mad with the entrapment of the village, like an animal caged by conformity, houses with open doors, clean new thatch, neatly stacked wood piles, yellow clampias uniformly click-clacking down the hard-beaten road, stored-up bags of corn flour. Of course, this sounds perfect, but it is not perfect for a wild-hearted wolf girl. Was I to spend my whole life making cheese? I had the fire in me, and it was the fire of the wild land, not of the village, not the farm. I did not know then that it takes the fire of the wild land to brave birth and death also. I would learn that later. When I was a girl, dear Wolfia, I could only think of flying away, raise my wings up and fly like a marsh heron in the spring. I had no idea how strong I was. Mar Emma always told stories about her life. This is how we passed the days in our little cottage in the midst of the crescent forest, not too far outside of the village of Coldwater. I looked around the inside of the cottage. 2 rooms and a thatched roof, rafters hung with cookpots and dried herbs, fresh straw on the floor, a lovely warm fire, pea soup with fat carrots bubbling in the pot, little breads, broches on the table. I loved the broches. They were a special treat from Coldwater. Mar Emma was paid for her healing services in many different ways. Little tiger breads were my favorite. The way the crust cracked in the oven, it came out looking just like a tiger's fur is supposed to look. Naturally, I had never seen a tiger, but I had seen many cats, and Mar Emma had many stories. We even had a black and white spotted cat called Little Bread once, a small version, Mar Emma said, of the mother beast. I had never seen an oven either. Mar Emma did not have one, and although I was born in the village, I had not been back since my birth. As I looked around, I saw a part of the house at the corner was crumbling. Some of the mud and small stones that filled space between the wood had melted or collapsed. This worried me a little. Sometimes I worried, since the forester died. But Mar Emma said we would repair it in the spring. She said, just now the ground is frozen, so our repair work is frozen as well. She had the hole stuffed up with rags. She said that was fine. Mar Emma helped the village women. She was there when they gave birth, there when they did not choose to give birth, there when the children were sick, plying them with tea herbs, there when they died. And she even helped the men in spite of the fact that they envied her time and relationship with the women. Mar Emma was loved, venerated, and ridiculed all at once. She was called the Woman of the Forest, the forester's wife, Mevrouw Coldwater, Madame de Vries, midwife, and Lady of Herbs. Very few knew her as Mar Emma. Perhaps the forester and I were the only ones. The forester was a bright-eyed boy, she said. I knew him when he was a child, and I knew how the frogs sang to him, how the herons swooped down and fanned him with their wings, how wild boars rubbed against his legs, how the roe ate grasses from his hand. What other Frieslander was like the forester? What other Fries would help the mother wolf birth her pups? The forester was magic. When he entered the sacred grove, the hunabed filled with light, the mound of Earth Mother shuddered, and the world was born anew. His power was as strong as the power of wolf spirit. I interrupted her. "Tell me about my mother," I demanded. I had heard about the forester over and over. I lived with him for 8 years, but I don't remember so much magic. I don't remember the hunabed lighting up. He seemed a tired old man to me, not so different from others I'd seen. I would rather hear about my mother, even though the story made me sad in my heart. Mar Emma would never tell me my mother's name. I believed my mother was still in cold water. "Your mother," Mar Emma began, "was young. You were not her first. There were 4 others before you. I attended at each birth. You were the 5th child to come, and you came in the 5th year. I had a special connection with all your mother's children. All were my spirit children, but none of these connections could rival the one I have with you." Mar Emma was my spiritual mother. She raised me from a kit in a basket. Your mother called me to her house, and I went as I had done 4 times before. She was big and strong and built for having babies. We expected no problems. She had taken the mother wort all through the gestation to keep away evil spirits. She had drunk strawberry tea, and the labor was good and strong. But when you came out, your little foot was tucked under. It was clubbed and twisted, and you were completely covered with little strawberries, like a strawberry patch at midsummer. All my strawberries are gone now. I wonder what I looked like when I was covered with strawberries. Mar Emma said they disappeared shortly after my birth. I had never seen one on anybody's body. Of course, I've never seen anybody's body except Mar Emma and the forester. Your mother would not look at you. She said, "It is bitten by the wolf spirit. The child is cursed. The wolf has got its foot, and I cannot suffer it to live. Take it away. It cannot help with the planting, nor can it help with the harvest. Take it away, and I will give you extra." She promised to make me a warm blanket of sheep's wool to ward off the ice-cold winter if I would take you away. And take you away I did. I gave you syrup of poppy to stun you into quietude, and I took you in a basket to the frozen stream. I could hear the water swirling and hissing under the ice. I broke the edge with a rock, pounding until the rock cracked the surface and I could break out a hole, and I was just about to push you through the hole, basket and all, when the river spirit spoke. She spoke like a gentle woman. "Do not put this child through the hole," she said. "Let her sleep the night in the hunabed, and if she lives, she will be yours. If she dies, I will dissolve her in the current." I was astonished because I had not heard the voice of the river before. I went to the grove of the hunabed, and by now it was late afternoon and dark and cold. I walked down the thin, blanketed snow path through the woods in the misty semi-darkness of a February's eve. The full moon was already up and shone through layers of silvery clouds, and she lit my way, though dimly, because it was that time when it is not all light, but not dark either, the kind of wintry darkness you have a few hours after noon. I came to the oval mound in the midst of the crescent forest, the mound where I had communed with the Earth Mother many times before. In the dark, against the dusting of snow, the uncovered rocks of the hunabed looked pitch black, dark, huge forms, and they were full with life, filled with death also, the births, illnesses, struggles, and deaths of the ancient ones of whom we do not speak. The shapes of the stones looked like an animal's legs, and in the dark they seemed to crawl like a strange night creature on the Earth Mother's belly. I was frightened. There was so much movement in the stillness. Who had taken shelter here? What footsteps, now silenced, had moved through these woods to this sacrificial grove? Hidden in the deep twilight cloak of the bare hazelnuts and oaks, I paused at the edge of the circle and hid. I knew there was no one there. How could there be on a wintry night such as this one? And yet I had to be sure. There was a feeling in the air, a strange hush. I felt I was being watched, but who could be watching? I felt queasy in my stomach. My hair stood on end with chill bumps that raced down my legs and crawled over the top of my head. My knees were shaking. There must be spirits about. Perhaps the wolf spirit. I noted the position of each stone. Those stones I knew in daylight like the fingers of my own hand. I noted the position, checked the placements east to west, and waited in absolute stillness just to make sure they were not moving. Every time I looked away and looked back, they seemed to have changed positions. I wanted to go home to the forester's fire, drink some steaming Ayrton soup, warm my hands and nose and feet, but there was no escape. I must face my task. I watched. I counted the stones I could see, 39, and counted them again. I waited. White wisps of lace and frozen beaded ice hung on the dried plant skeletons and spider webs near my feet. I could see them better and better as the full mother moon rose higher. An owl shrieked in the darkness. I jumped and almost dropped the basket. You had not made a peep, and I thought you may be dead already, but I dared not look. I dared not move my eyes from the vision of the hunabed. Those black stones rising in the clearing, they seemed 3 times their normal size, and so very, very black. Stepping very lightly, I approached the outer ring of stones and paused. My feelings were heightened. I could feel the spirits. I could feel movement. The back of my neck bristled and the inside of my head felt oddly light. I could see the open doorway on the side of the hunabed. A strange light seemed to shine out from the covered area at the end where the slabs were still across the top and the earth was still piled atop the roof, providing a hiding place or shelter, a site for a secret meeting. I knew that the most sacred place, the most sacred of sacreds, was the place where I must go. In terror, for it was terror I felt now, though I could not understand why, I stepped close to the door. I was afraid the spirits would pull me in the ground or trap me in a stone. I looked in the door, saw nothing but a strange light at the far end. The light came from nowhere, just floated in the darkness. I shivered, my shoulders shuddered. Then something brushed my face. I gasped. I looked behind me. Nothing. Beside me. Nothing. I ducked down and scooted into the hunabed, pushing the basket before me. It was dry and dusty on the floor, and with my eyes accustomed as they were to the dark, I could see the shapes of dried oak leaves and old acorns in the open places. Moonlight speared through like icicling shafts of silver light. I pulled up my cloak and half walked, half crawled, pushing the basket to the end. terrified that the spirits would push a stone before the door and I would be trapped inside forever with a dead, club-footed baby, a spirit child that had been bitten by the wolf. As fast as I could then, I pushed the basket against the big stone in the end room and hastily backed out, scooted backward out through the door as deftly as possible. Then I spun around to face the outer circle. My heart was pounding. Boom. All was silent, hushed, and eerie hush. Then the owl shrieked again. I screamed, and my own scream frightened me more than anything before. I began to run, and I ran through the woods. Something was chasing me. I ran from my own fate. I ran from death. Death was chasing me. Death. I must run faster. I felt a pain in my chest, and still I ran faster. On I ran. Fear was strong. Fear was stronger than death. Mar Emma thought for a second. Then she added, even stronger than the thought of breaking my ankle in the dark. I ran as fast as I could to the forester's house, and when it came into view, how grateful I was to see the frosted thatch, the cozy yellow light shimmering around the edges of the door, smoke from the little fire curling toward the moon. I ran through the cabbage patch. Barren coal still stood on frosted stalks. It is strange what you remember. I remember the hoary white frost dangling about the edges of the wrinkled leaves. I ran to the door and banged. When the forester realized it was me knocking and banging, he unbolted the door, and I can remember how he stared at me with fear in his eyes. He was nearly as frightened as I was, since he thought I was staying in the village. He was frightened by the disturbance, frightened by my appearance. I told him I had decided to walk home, but was caught by early nightfall and had to run. It was that kind of night. An eerie feeling was in the ether. I sat before the fire. My feet were numb, but I had not noticed. The forester melted snow in a pot, and I dangled my feet in the tepid water until I could feel them again. He gave me soup and tea, and I warmed up, but I could not sleep. All night I heard the cries of owls, the shriek of herons. Why were they not sleeping on such a cold night as this? Something scratched on the door, and I heard sniffing. Someone rattled the bolts. Spirits were about. Spirits were about. Surely. Now Mar Emma was coming to my favorite part of the story. I liked this part because it raised my hackles. I knew something happened there in the Hunebed that night, but my memory is only partial, like a memory seen through a thick forest mist on a no-moon night. I remember going back and forth between dreams and waking that night. I was just born, so I would not have said that then, but now that is the way I would say it. First, I was rocking in a gray, misty sea, rocking and turning. Then I felt my head and shoulders being crushed. Then I remember frosty silver spears. Then I remember a big, black, warm body. The main thing I remember is the huge black tail fanning over my face. All these memories are glimpses, and all my life I have tried in dreams and waking to remember that night in the Hunebed. Mar Emma told stories late into the night. I loved the ones that frightened me. Now I know that is because I felt protected by Mar Emma. Almost. She chased a tiny mouse across the floor once, yelling frantically at me to get my feet up. She chased it and smashed it and smashed it and smashed it with a giant broom. This took away some of my feeling of safety. Mar Emma was like a mad woman chasing after that mouse. It was almost like she was taken by spirits. Remembering now, I think she was afraid of something I did not know about, and that made me feel afraid also. But I was not afraid of mice, or at least I did not think I was. Some things in life are hard to understand. In the morning, when I could see, morning came late in the midwinter, Mar Emma continued. I bundled up in my blue cloak, heavy socks, and wood shoes, and I walked back through the crescent forest to the hunabed. As I neared the grove, I held my breath. The mists of morning still swirled about the ground, but it was warming up a bit, and the hoarfrost was beginning to melt. At first glimpse, everything looked different than it had in the night, and I wondered if my own fantasy had tricked me. The hunabed stones were pale brown and friendly, not at all black, and they were a little bit green, a little bit mossy, not all cold, not all dead, as I thought. Sunlight bent through the trees, and light shadows fell across the mound. It seemed inviting and friendly, but I knew my task was neither inviting nor friendly. My task was a cruel one. I expected to find a dead baby, perhaps half-eaten by the forest night creatures, perhaps stolen away and dragged to some hungry lair for a steaming winter breakfast. Gingerly, I approached the mound. Gingerly, I approached the doorway. I crouched down and looked inside. At first, my eyes could not see. I squinted in the dark. I could vaguely see the basket, but it became more and more clear. I crawled down the corridor, dragging my hind legs as if I were crawling down the inside of a petrified beast. Now I was sure the beast was sleeping, and I crawled to the place where I had laid the basket, and what I saw there caused my jaw to drop open. All around were scratchings in the dirt, and piled leaves brushed up around the basket. The place was warm, too warm, and smelled of dog. I sniffed the still air. No, it did not smell of dog. It smelled of wolf. Someone had definitely been here. There was a clump of black hair in the leaves, and this I picked up and placed carefully in my satchel. Mustering my courage, I looked inside the basket. And you looked happily up at me and cooed. You were warm and snuggled up into the blankets. I said, my babe, you are bitten by the wolf spirit, and by the wolf spirit you are saved. You must be a spirit child, sent to me to learn Earth Mother's ways. Yes, yes, you are bitten by the wolf. You were so sweet in your little bed, little pink face and blue eyes, little fat cheeks. What a pretty baby, I thought. You seemed to be glowing. I was glad I had not put you in the river. You raised your arm and pointed a finger at me, and I took this as a sign that I was to raise you up. The forester and I had no children, only the animals of the wood, so you would be our child. I knew the forester would not mind. I called you Bitten-By-The-Wolf. Once I named you Hercha, the protected. That was years later when someone came around from the village and saw you limping, and I was afraid the word might travel that there was a lame girl here, that a baby who was supposed to be born dead had somehow lived. But the name didn't take. Of course, No one could have known you were not mine. Only your mother knew about your foot. Not a single other soul saw you. And there was no way your mother would ever say anything, even if she knew. So that is the story of how you came to be my girl. You were saved by the river spirit. Wolf spirit kept you warm. Goat gave you milk. And so you grew to be a woman. Mar Emma had taken that wolf hair and carved a little hazelwood box with a sliding top for it. She carved a picture of a wolf on top of it. She kept the box in a special place in the rafters and brought it down to use for charms and incantations to heal babies with strawberries and others with afflictions of the blood, hair, and skin. She let me touch the hair. She said it would put the power of healing in my hands. It was softer than you would think. Always I wondered why wolf spirit had not eaten me. I was a happy girl. As soon as I was big enough and strong enough, probably when I was about 30 moons old, Mar Emma carved an oak stick and I began to walk with it. She carved a wolf head on the top of the stick because I was bitten by the wolf. And this is one of my first memories, walking the path with that stick in the summer sun, gathering roots and tubers in the forest with Mar Emma. Wild boar rooted and snorted with us, and every now and then the forester speared a boar or a deer or squirrel, and we had meat in the pot. As I grew, Mar Emma taught me all the plants of the forest, grove, and field, and how to use them. Waybroad was for sore eyes, loose bowels, blood spitting, and piles. Elhorn buds were for skin eruptions, for cleansing wounds, to grow hair, and to dye the hair black. Mar Emma stuffed elhorn leaves in the nostrils to purge the brain and stop the fever. At midwinter, we made a circle of elhorn berries at the hunabed. We stood in the middle to generate strength. Banewort, which only came in some summers in the crescent wood, was boiled in goat's milk to open breathing and to help with the falling sickness. Extract of hazelnut berries soothed the throat. A boiled concoction of goat's beard roots dissolved bile, cured burning in the chest, watery stomach, and pains in the side. Slippery root tea also helped loose bowels and internal bleeding. The 9 sacred herbs are mugwort, plantain, stime, cockspur grass, mayweed, wurgaloo, apple, thyme, and fennel. I learned their sacred rhymes. This is the herb which is called wurgaloo. The seal sent this over the back of the ocean to heal the hurt of other poison. We gathered with the left hand by night or by day, depending on the plant, by the full moon, and sometimes in certain seasons, like the mistletoe we gathered on midsummer night. We never let the herb touch the ground, as that might drain out the potencies, but we placed them carefully in a basket or a carefully folded cloth. Year to year, the patches were always the same, sometimes thicker, sometimes thinner, and Mar Emma tried to keep her stores fresh within each year, saying the plants would lose their cures if they hung in the rafters for long. Mar Emma ran away from cold water to go with the forester when she was a young girl, and it was the forester's grandmother, called by the names that Mar Emma came to inhabit, wise woman, midwife, healing woman, and so on, who taught Mar Emma about wildcrafting, wort cunning, and curing. When Mar Emma first came, the forester's grandmother still lived in the cottage. Grandfather was the first forester. We always asked the patch spirits for permission to cut, crop, chop, and gather as grandmother had taught Mar Emma, and Mar Emma had taught me. Mar Emma taught me many rhymes to use for the asking. Banewort, how do you grow? And now may I dig up just one little row? And there were rhymes for curing. Banewort, in the milk of the goat, for breath and for life, open this throat. Then the banewort would be drunk, and if the spirits willed, the child would be able to breathe. Mar Emma taught me everything, and as I grew, she carved me bigger and bigger sticks. I had a collection of walking sticks with wolf heads, each one taller than the last, leaning in the corner. This was the record of my growth. Since we lived so far back in the Crescent Forest, we had few visitors. Sometimes runners or men came from the village to call Mar Emma to a sick bed or a mother bed. I always hid when these runners came, so I never spoke to anyone except Mar Emma and the forester. I never went to the village because my foot would not walk me. When the forester died, Mar Emma and I buried him ourselves, digging a hole and making a mound of stones over him. Mar Emma said it was lucky it was summer, or she did not know how we could have done it, old as she was getting, and me with my twisted hip and foot. I grew old in the cottage. Mar Emma said she was so happy with me, that our lives together were so cozy, so gezellig, and as I grew old, Mar Emma grew even older. Mar Emma had often been paid in rags for her services, and she and I sewed sack dresses and quilts and dukias for the new babies. We sewed and talked, and she told story after story of how she had run away to live with the forester, how magical the forester was, how she had left the stifling village and run away into the woods, how they did not even try to find her, how she and the forester had passed a stick 3 times through the fire at midsummer in the presence of the grandmother to make a marriage, and how, when she returned to the village to attend the mothers and children, they did not even acknowledge she was the same girl who had run away. Once she attended her own mother, and her mother did not know her. Old as she grew, she always took care of me. One day, Mar Emma did not return from gathering. It grew dark, and still she did not return. I called out into the night, Mar Emma, Mar Emma, but she did not answer. I tried to walk with my stick to find her in the night, but I could not see, and I stumbled and fell. All night I sat burning a candle and praying to the wood spirits to protect Mar Emma. After a while, I cried. I banged the rafter with my stick in the middle of the night and knocked down the wolf hair. I opened the box, and it seemed all light inside. It brought me comfort. I touched the hair. Wolf spirit, flying free, bring Mar Emma home to me. Wolf spirit, flying free, bring Mar Emma home to me. I whispered over and over into the flame, but the more I whispered, the more I knew Mar Emma would not be coming back. In the day I searched for Mar Emma, looking at all the blooming patches, and I searched the next day and the next and the next. My good leg became very tired, and my hips ached, and I fell and hurt myself and had a hard time getting up. Then I realized the only way I would find Mar Emma is to sit in the deep silence, inside the hunebed at the center of the stone circle, and let the spirit of Earth Mother tell me where she was. The next morning, I put on Mar Emma's long blue cloak, pulled the hood over my head, and began upon the walking path, moving very slowly, lumbering past the the yarrow, winding past the sour grass, thumping my stick in the dirt, thinking, stick, stick, wolf head stick, get me there and make it quick. It seemed the faster I wanted to go, the slower I went, until all time slowed into a few deep breaths, and then into one breath at a time, one step at a time. It was then I looked down and saw the cat's head. It was right in the middle of the path, but had I not been moving so slowly, I would never have seen it. It looked just like a clod of dirt. It was the color of summer dirt, and the shape and texture of summer dirt also. But there was something about it that made me look closer. Balancing on my stick, I leaned over and picked it up. It was a completely dry and furless cat head, with the skin stretched over it like thin worked leather. I had never seen such a thing before. The ears were bent down on the sides, and the mouth was open slightly, with the sharp little teeth perfectly white and bared. It was not frightening, but it was strange. I had a feeling I should move it aside so it would not be smashed in the path. I had a momentary feeling it was the little bread of so many years ago, but I am sure it could not have been. Still, I do not know what became of little bread. She disappeared, just like Mar Emma. Anyway, no one really used this road but Mar Emma and me. No one had visited for months. So there was no way the head would be harmed. I don't know why I was worried. I put it back. I put the cat head down exactly where I found it. I walked deeper and deeper into the crescent wood. The sun was high to guide me as I followed the path to the earth mound of the Hunabed. When I reached the mound in the clearing of the sacred grove, I stepped inside the outlying stone circle and walked around the Hunabed 3 times. I stood at the place where we had made the Elhorn berry circle. This was as Mar Emma had taught me to do when seeking guidance from the spirits. Then I went to the place where Mar Emma had first laid my basket when I was a baby. I crawled deep inside the Hunabed, crawling through rays of sunlight that shone through the open stones, stones no longer covered with Earth Mother's deep protection, until I entered the inner room. That room was still covered. Far in the back end, my eyes began to adjust to the light until I could see the inside of the stone Hunabed. I saw a tiny carving near the bottom of the end stone that looked like a wolf. I thought, that must be a sign. Wolf spirit, help me see where in the wood Mar Emma be. Wolf spirit, help me see where in the wood Mar Emma be. I repeated this over and over, falling into a deep trance until a picture was revealed to me. I saw Mar Emma clutch her breast and fall dead by the river. I saw the river spirit rise and claim her empty body. I saw her soul fly up from her body, fly to our cottage, and enter the little carved box of wolf hair she kept in the rafters. I saw this, and then the wolf spirit was before me. The wolf spirit was before me, a big black she-wolf. Her eyes glinted yellow in the semi-dark of the enclosed daylight. I was not afraid. She looked me in the eye, raised her black tail, and suddenly the entire memory of the first night of my life returned. She said, I bit you when you were still in the womb, twisted your foot and slowed you down so you could have a life of rest. You were weary of living even before you were born. Wolf spirit child, I called to the river spirit to send you to the sacred mound. I warmed and suckled you in your nest. I gave you the wolfen magic of protection, the wolfen magic of invisibility. And I called the wise woman to come and get you. I come now to tell you, you shall go to live the rest of your days protected and revered. You shall become visible. You shall be known for what the wise woman taught you. You shall be born again as quiet wisdom for the ignorant. Your path will be a gentle one. You will find great happiness, and I shall come again to guide you when it is time for your soul to depart. You are my child, Wolfen One. I have been with you from the beginning, from the start. I have guided you, and I will be with you for all time. She disappeared then, leaving me containing a strange mystery, and I knew there was no more to be said. I knew that there was no point in searching for Mar Emma's body. I would find her soul at home. Slowly I crawled from the hunabed, feeling the big black she-wolf spirit beside me. I felt her walking beside me as I retraced my steps, pausing in the Elhorn circle, 3 circles around the mound, and then I walked the path home. So slowly did I move that life seemed to pass in the tiniest increments. Every plant called out to me, and I called out, "Hello!" And I recited in my mind the magical curative properties and incantations for each patch. With every step, I felt wolf spirit beside me. Spirit stick, guide me home. I know that I am not alone. I repeated the rhyme as I walked, and when I came back to the neck of the woods near where the cottage was, something strange happened. Again, I beheld the cat head on the path, and part of it was crushed. Only one side, not as if it had been crushed by a footstep, for anyone, man, woman, or beast, would realize instantly if they had stepped upon such a fragile skull, but it was more like it had been crushed by a wheel. My first thought was to worry for the head, and I felt sorrow for not having moved it in the first place. I picked it up and placed it behind a clump of fennel, but then something else struck me. The plants were bent down, strangely crushed, as if they had been greatly disturbed. Something very big had come down the path. Something very, very big. I was not sure how to feel. Mar Emma was gone and could not protect me. Mar Emma could not hide me. I continued on slowly, thinking, lumbering. I thought about what to do, and then the voice of the wolf spirit spoke beside me. Wolf child, go straight home. You will find that you are not alone. Wolf child, go straight home. You will find that you are not alone. Outside the cottage, I could see what had happened. There stood a wagon and a huge 4-legged black beast, the likes of which I had never seen. I supposed this was a horse, but though I had heard horses came and went all up and down the rivers to the north and the south that led out to the sea, the crescent forest stood between rivers where no routes went, and since I could not walk fast enough to leave the wood, only forest animals had I seen. The horse was sleek and beautiful. The wagon was awesome to behold. Smoke was curling from the smoke hole, and I smelled cooking barley. Someone had opened up the barley stores. I stopped in the path. Wolf spirit spoke, urging me on. Wolf child, go straight home. You will find that you are not alone. I stepped briskly to the door, banged it open with my stick, and boldly walked through. The man that sat at the table screamed, then was silent. He shook with fear or exhaustion or wonder as he sat looking at me. He made a magic sign with his hand on his head and heart and could not take his eyes off of me. As I stood in the midst of that room, I realized I had spoken to no one in all my life but Mar Emma and the forester. Time stood still. I stood in silence as the sun moved across the sky. The one sat at the table dressed in a rough brown robe tied with a crude rope, his mouth gaping open. The other one laid upon the floor, face as pale as snow on a winter day. He was as white as death. Clearly, they had come to Mar Emma for healing. I did not move, but waited. I did not know that the one at the table had been struck dumb because he believed me to be the angel or the mother of his God. I did not know that when the one on the floor opened his eyes at last, he would be instantly healed by the sight of my eyes alone. How could I know that I stood in an aureole of light, that my eyes glowed like lightning, that my staff shone like a torch, that my blue cloak was the image of the cloak of his goddess? The man at the table breathed, Maria. I said, Mar Emma. He shook his head in affirmation and whispered, Maria. I fed them. I sewed their tattered clothing. I cared for the men children as Mar Emma had cared for me. I gave them soups full with healing herbs that restored the dead one to life. I lit the candle for them, knelt when they knelt, and whispered when they whispered. The one at the table, I learned, was called Brother Jan. The other, the one who rose up from death, was Father Winfrith. They were from a far-off tribe. Father Winfrith's words were twisted, but some of them I could understand. I understood they felt the spirits were with me, that they had been magically led to me, and so they had. The wolf spirit was with me. I was bitten by the wolf, but I did not tell them this. They called me Maria. I understood they wanted me to go away with them, that they would take me to a kind man who would take care of me forever in exchange for what I had done for them. They had friends waiting at the edge of the crescent forest who could take care of the cottage, and if I ever wanted to come back, I could easily come. Over and over they said the words, Mephibosheth, Mephibosheth, as if I would finally understand their meaning. I never understood, but I remembered the words. Winfrith pointed to bird tracks bound in leaves that he carried in his robe when he said these words. I nodded and smiled. Winfrith nodded and smiled. I decided to go. My heart trilled with excitement. I must have felt like Mar Emma had felt when she left Coldwater for the freedom of the forest. I would leave the crescent forest for the freedom of the world. The men were so kind. I bundled my precious plants, sewed the soul of Mar Emma into her blue cloak, which I kept ever close to me, and began the long ride in the grand wagon to the city at the center of the world. At the edge of the forest, we met a large band of men, and here we left Father Winfrith, who was by now completely cured. Some of the men were on their way to Saxony, some to Upper Frisia. Some went into the Crescent Forest to live in the cottage. They were telling the people all around about their church. Brother Jan stayed with me, and accompanied by almost 30 men in caravan, we wound through the countryside, by hill and dale, raging river, village after village, on our way to the great city of Utrecht. They called me Sister Maria. I was transported into the most sacred of inner circles. The music. Harmonies moved against the stone walls and circled back around the empty room, raising the hair on the back of my arms and hands. Bells rang, brothers and sisters sang, and the singing echoed like nothing you have ever heard. Wolf spirit howled in my heart. The howl moved into my throat and out of my mouth, and I was singing. I was singing. I was singing. I sang and sang and sang, my own heart making a sound that split like one color into many, like a lily bursting open in the spring. The flower opened and closed again, and it went on this way, song after song, chant after chant, and I was transported into holiness. My life became a holy life. They draped me in robes, clean, beautiful, and these robes I sewed for the brothers and sisters. With great joy and in great beauty, I sang and I sewed. I sewed vestments for the brothers and sisters. I sewed vestments for the fathers. I sewed stoles for the fathers. I prayed with the sisters and ate with the sisters, and little by little I learned one word, then another, and all the sisters were kind to me, and they were loving. And I lived in that great enclosure in true and utter happiness, cooking soups with the healing plants which I taught the young girls to gather by the stream. Father Winfrith came to visit once. Everyone whispered about him and called him by the name of Father Boniface. For Father Clement, I sewed the most beautiful stole you have ever seen. It glittered with amethyst, garnets, rubies, diamonds, golden lace, and beads. Such riches, such beauty, such elegance. And inside each stole I made, I sewed in a hair of the wolf spirit from the clump in the hunebed that Mar Emma found the day after my first night. I sewed in this bit of Mar Emma's soul so that the fathers might be empowered by the spirit of the wolf mother of the Crescent Forest as they went out on their missions to heal the sick and redeem the wayward heathens. It is not all one way, said Riavec tenderly. There are many lives and many guises. The candle burned low. I looked into the crystal sphere. I sighed. More and more missionaries went to Friesland, to Saxony, and to Frisia, radiating out from Rome to the ends of the earth. The English Church, especially because of its strategic position in relationship to Northern Europe, was controlled by the papacy more than any other church outside of Italy. Englanders were delighted with their high status within the hierarchy of the church, and when the English missionaries went out on missions, their first act was to go to Italy to seek the blessing of the Pope himself. Willibrord and Winfrith, young English noblemen anxious to succeed, went to Rome to seek the Pope's blessing and support. Winfrith began in 718. His lifelong goal was to convert all of Frisia. He divided Hesse, Bavaria, and Thuringia into dioceses. He founded a string of Benedictine monasteries. Winfrith was so successful in Northern Europe that Pope Gregory blessed him with a new name, Boniface, and eventually made him the Archbishop of Mainz. Willibrord, blessed by the Pope under the name of Clement, became the Archbishop of Utrecht. It was Father Clement for whom I sewed. Father Boniface was working under Father Clement when he claimed Coldwater. It is told in the Catholic Church that it was Father Boniface, later to become Saint Boniface, who was shown the miracle of the Christmas tree. While working to convert the northern heathens, he intruded upon a group of worshippers in a sacred grove making a sacrifice to the god Thor. He stopped the sacrifice, said to be a little prince, and cut down the giant sacred oak at the head of the grove. He called this tree the blood oak. As the oak fell, the story goes, a fir tree appeared. The new tree, he said, was the tree of life, the tree of Christ that would now replace the blood oak throughout all of Europe. In 742, the law of Northern Europe became papal law. All marriages were to be public. All Christians, and now all people were Christian by law, must tithe to the church. In 747, bishops of Northern Europe declared they would maintain the Catholic faith and unity and subjection to the Roman Church till the end of their lives. In 772, Irminsul, the most sacred oak tree in all of Saxony, was felled. This symbolized a major victory for the church. In 768, Charlemagne became king of the Franks, and in 785 he declared that if the Saxons, who he had violently conquered with the Frieslanders, refused to be baptized or in any other way insulted Christianity, they would suffer the death penalty. All pagan customs were outlawed. Violators were savagely punished by Charlemagne's army. Thus, on pain of death, all of Northern Europe was finally converted. The lands Charlemagne conquered, all lands and tribes of Northern Europe, were brought to order, and it was said in accordance with God's will. Strict canon law was enforced, complete conformity was demanded in monasteries, and correct Christian living was required throughout the kingdom. To this end, manuals for effective preaching were created, and schools were established for the clergy and the people so the Bible could be more correctly comprehended. During the reign of Charlemagne, church and state completely united so as to bring Christianity to all, Christianity under strict control. On Christmas Day, in the year 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. The northern tribes resisted. In 754, Boniface was slain by Frisians who were called by the church a band of pirates. But the power of the church combined with the power of the Frankish army was as strong as it was ruthless. By the end of the 8th century, Europe had been effectively Christianized, organized, and totally subdued. Lifting the veil of ignorance, you learn that there is no one angle, no one right way. Riavec said sadly. The soul grows through the accumulation of experience. It pushes out its boundaries, becomes compassionate, becomes wise. It opens to encompass all that exists, to embrace life and all of life's creatures. The heart opens, broadens, deepens, and makes room for all. This is the way of love. Love is the path of your soul, Pamela. Open to love and receive your calling. I thought about all of this as I opened the carved wood box of wolf hair given to me by my friend at that 40th birthday celebration when I danced all night on punctured feet. Now I understood the meaning of the strange gift. I took out a piece of wolf hair and carefully sewed it into my minister's stole, the purple and white stole I had recently finished making and in which I would soon be ordained. And as I sewed, I remembered my roots as a member of the wolf clan. Somehow, I thought, as a minister, I must remain open. I carefully stitched on deep red garnets to remind me of my womanhood. And as I stitched, I had the very strong memory that since the beginning of the Dark Ages, every priest's garment I had made as a woman in servitude. Still, I had loved the priests. Still, I had loved the church. Still, I had loved the music. Do not judge, I thought to myself. There is innocence and guilt in every direction.